That is the FBI working with the public as I promised, being transparent and providing critical information along the way in the manhunt for the suspect or suspects involved in Charlie's assassination. We received over 11,000 tips in the first 24 hours alone. We received 16,000 submissions to our digital media enterprise and tip lines. That is a large number of material to go through.
Things that are of interest. Okay, yesterday we mentioned that apparently it was kind of everybody's first day on the job, right? 9/10 was everybody's first day on the job, meaning that there were a lot of these recent and brand new hires in Utah that would all kind of come across and have to deal with this case. Kash Patel, I told you, cleaned house at the state borough. He then installs a person that has a long tenure in DC, Robert Bowles. His first case is Charlie Kirk's assassination. Why would he want to uproot and move his family to Utah after having roots in Virginia for so long? I don't know, but that's the circumstance. Also, I told you there was a new CEO and therefore a new lead surgeon, Andrew Zenger, over at the hospital, the regional hospital that Charlie was taken to, although that was not the nearest hospital from the university, and it also ranked extremely low in terms of the most best equipped hospital, if you will, to deal with the sort of trauma that Charlie was suffering from, a neck wound, obviously. So it's very strange.
A voice that once carried power has been cut short. The country is in shock. And before anyone could even question the facts, a suspect was marched in front of the cameras and branded guilty in the court of public opinion. At first, the narrative looked clean and convincing. A wanderer accused of pulling the trigger, a so-called confession that checked every box, and evidence prosecutors swore was airtight. But once the noise faded, the cracks began to show. Lost video footage, witnesses whose stories don't align, federal agents quietly seizing critical files, and at the center of it all, a man who refuses to back down from his claim that he was set up. So, what are we really looking at here? Justice served or something much darker? Is Tyler Robinson truly the shooter or the perfect fall guy in a cover-up bigger than anyone imagined? As you're watching this update, drop your thoughts in the comments. We read everything and we respond. Your voice proves you stand on the side of truth and accountability. Because this stopped being about one man a long time ago. This is about buried evidence, unseen players, and a betrayal that may have altered history. Tonight, we dig into what they never intended you to know and expose the fault lines in a case that may rest on fabrication instead of fact. Before we dive into this story, remember this is Shadow Detective, a channel that stands for justice and giving every case the attention it deserves. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss any of our investigations. And don't forget, share your thoughts and theories below. Every clue counts. Tonight, we uncover the secrets behind the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and why the man accused, Tyler Robinson, may not be the killer at all. The FBI's hidden files, contradictions in the evidence, and silenced voices raise disturbing questions. Was Robinson framed? And if so, who truly betrayed Charlie Kirk? Just hours after the shooting, authorities told the nation they had their man. On the roof of a nearby building, officers claimed they recovered the rifle used in the attack. Forensic teams swabbed it, and the preliminary DNA results, they said, pointed straight to Tyler Robinson. Prosecutors doubled down by highlighting messages found on Robinson's phone, texts that, on the surface, seemed like a confession. They described anger, intent, and a sense that something final was coming. To officials, that was the nail in the coffin. The media ran with it instantly. Headlines exploded. Commentators portrayed Robinson as a symbol of political extremism. The arrest was presented as swift, certain, and unquestionable, exactly the kind of narrative that calms a shaken nation. But behind the curtain, nothing was as secure as it seemed. The DNA results were only preliminary, and serious concerns were raised about how the weapon was handled and documented. The so-called confession texts were never independently authenticated, and the timestamps didn't even line up with the official timeline. What the public was told, and what actually holds up under scrutiny, are two very different stories. Still, with Robinson behind bars, and the evidence presented as airtight. Prosecutors painted the picture of a young drifter turned assassin. But even as the case moved forward, sharp eyes began to notice cracks forming in the foundation of the state's story. As the weeks passed, the defense began to peel back the layers of the prosecution's story. What they found raised more questions than answers. Surveillance cameras positioned around the venue should have provided a clear record of events. But when the footage was turned over, several minutes were missing. Moments that could have shown who really accessed the rooftop where the rifle was found. Prosecutors dismissed the gap as a technical error. The defense called it deliberate. Eyewitness accounts told a different story than the official narrative. Multiple people reported seeing a second figure fleeing the scene, a shadowed presence moving quickly away from the rooftop. Their statements were buried deep in police reports, downplayed as unreliable, and never presented to the public. And then there were the messages prosecutors described as a confession. At first glance, they seemed damning. But when investigators traced the timestamps, something strange appeared. Several of the texts were sent after the time Robinson was allegedly in custody. Others didn't align with the shooting timeline at all. Perhaps most disturbing of all was what surfaced on police body cameras. In the hours after the arrest, officers can be heard speaking about the case as if the outcome was already decided. One line stood out: "Let's keep this simple." Those words were recorded before any forensic testing was complete, before DNA analysis, before ballistic matches. To the defense, it was proof the investigation was shaped not by evidence, but by convenience. Each revelation chipped away at the foundation of the prosecution's case. Each contradiction suggested that the story the public was told was not the whole truth. And for Tyler Robinson, it was the beginning of a defense built not only on doubt, but on the possibility that he was never the shooter at all. The deeper the defense dug, the more troubling the federal role became. Documents obtained through discovery revealed that weeks before the assassination, FBI analysts had circulated memos warning that Charlie Kirk could be a potential target of extremist violence. His name appeared on a watch list of individuals considered at elevated risk. Yet, despite those warnings, no additional security was deployed the night he was killed. No extra agents, no protective detail, nothing. And then came the seizure of evidence. Within hours of Robinson's arrest, federal agents arrived on scene and took control of critical materials. The rifle, ballistics reports, even digital records from security systems. Items first collected by local police were quietly transferred into federal custody. When defense attorneys requested those files, they were told some were classified, others were unavailable, and some had simply been lost. Why did the FBI intervene in a state investigation, and why were so many of the seized files withheld from Robinson's defense? Prosecutors called it jurisdiction. The defense called it what the public suspected, a cover-up. Officers on the ground reported being told not to speak to the press and not to reveal what federal agents had taken. Public briefings never acknowledged the FBI's role, yet behind closed doors, the Bureau controlled the most critical pieces of the case. If Robinson really was the shooter, why was so much evidence sealed away? And if he wasn't, was the FBI hiding the truth? Every missing file, every unanswered question, fueled a growing fear that the real assassin walked free while a vulnerable young man took the fall. While Robinson sat behind bars, the nation fractured. His name became a political weapon on cable news. To one side, he was a violent ideologue, evidence that extremism had finally turned lethal. To the other, he was a pawn offered up to quiet public outrage while the real shooter disappeared. Politicians wasted no time stepping in. Some were calling for the death penalty before a jury was even selected. Others demanded inquiries into the FBI's involvement and the evidence that suddenly went missing. The case bled into campaign speeches, committee hearings, and state house debates. On the streets, the divide was impossible to ignore. Protesters crowded courthouse steps. One side demanded justice for Charlie Kirk and branded Robinson a killer. The other rallied for his release, denouncing the investigation as corrupt and incomplete. Every fresh leak, every suppressed document, only fanned the flames. Online, the chaos escalated. #Justice for Kirk and #Free Robinson trended side by side. Strangers fought over headlines. None of them had the full truth behind. Each rumor deepened distrust. Each contradiction made the case feel less like clarity and more like conflict. What began as a criminal trial transformed into something much bigger, a public referendum on the justice system itself. Was this an investigation in search of truth, or a conviction in search of a defendant? Was the court pursuing justice, or just a conclusion people could accept? In homes, classrooms, and workplaces, the question kept surfacing: if this case could be shaped by politics, what else has been buried? To many, Charlie Kirk's assassination doesn't feel random. It feels like betrayal, not just of a man, but of the institutions sworn to protect him and the truth. Kirk wasn't just a commentator, he was a lightning rod, an influential figure who drew loyalty, anger, and attention in equal measure. That's why the unanswered questions don't fade. Was he silenced because of his voice? Was his death useful to someone lurking off stage? And then there's Tyler Robinson, young, rootless, with no resources to defend himself. He checked every box for a ready-made suspect. Easy to blame, easy to display, easy to discard. But the missing evidence, sealed files, and federal interference point to a darker possibility. He wasn't chosen because he was guilty. He was chosen because he was convenient. What disturbs observers most isn't just the mystery, it's the silence. Federal documents remain hidden. Evidence has vanished. Witnesses have been pushed aside. Testimonies that don't fit the narrative are ignored. If the truth is buried in classified folders, will it ever be allowed out? And that's the real betrayal, maybe twice over. A betrayal of Charlie Kirk, whose death might not be what officials claimed. And a betrayal of the public, who were promised truth, justice, and transparency, but handed a script instead. This is no longer just about one man on trial. It's about power, secrecy, and whether truth in America survives once those who hold it decide to shut the door. Charlie Kirk is gone. Tyler Robinson remains behind bars. The FBI files stay sealed, and the questions, the ones that matter most, remain unanswered. Was Kirk silenced because of what he stood for? Was Robinson framed because he was easy to blame? Or has the truth been locked away, buried under the weight of secrecy and power? In the end, this case is not just about a killing in Utah. It is about trust, and whether the institutions sworn to protect us are capable of betraying us instead. The official story may be written, but the real story, that is still waiting to be told.